What is up, guys, and welcome back to the Sweat It Out podcast.
If you want to be successful, look inside.
We don't like sitting in the discomfort.
Then all of a sudden that day came when I got $20 and 2 free drinks to do a show, and I was like, oh shit, here we go, baby. You know?
Thank God she hasn't caught a chicken yet because she'll tear her head off.
Don't be soft.
That patience is key.
If all my friends are winning, then it's going to make me want to win more.
What is up, guys, and welcome back to the Sweat It Out podcast. Today, we're bringing on a personal performance coach who's helping build forever athletes through movement, mindfulness, and community. On top of that, he is a host of the Athletic Mindset podcast. Please help us welcome Cory Camp. What's up, brother?
Say that's the best introduction I've ever had.
Yeah, I'm telling you, he's fucking legendary. I'm just waiting for him to get like a little better Morgan Freeman voice, and I'm gonna pay him to narrate me like my day-to-day life.
When he does in the world that we live in.
Yeah. How much for you to narrate my whole life? Can we make that
Listen,
happen?
everything.
So here's my Venmo.
Everything has a price to Mendez. All right, everything.
Or is that is that what you like to say?
That's what I tell everybody that I meet on South Beach. I just walk around giving them your business card and tell them, hey, hit them up. You never know.
So how you been, Cory? How's everything going on your end, man? Obviously in the coaching world, during a time like this, things shifted, could be interesting. So definitely would love to start on that and kind of get your take on how you've made your shift.
Ooh, I love that question. Starting off hot. I've been good, man. I can't complain. I'm coming in here from sunny LA. Moved here at the start of this year in 2021. It's funny to look back a year ago where I was I didn't think I would be in this situation, but here we are, making it happen. Made the pivot to online coaching, started this business, and it's just been growing. I'm grateful for it.
So let's dive into that a little bit. What exactly do you offer, and how did you kind of, get into what you've been doing lately? Obviously, I know quite a bit about it being on your podcast, but and I guess, now would be a good time to announce as well, like,
put the plug in.
What is the name of your podcast?
Yeah, I was about to say, host the Athletic Mindset podcast that Josh was on the other day.
Absolutely phenomenal podcast. Loved it.
Thank you, guys. It's a fun one. So that really kind of started this idea around having these conversations around mental performance. What does it look like? And the more and more athletes I was talking to, and for context, I swam in college, was a nationally ranked swimmer, had a few school records at University of Delaware.
What events do you swim?
I was distance. So
2,000, 5,000.
I wish, not that far. Those events don't exist in college swimming, man. I would have been good at them. The mile, 500 free, 400 IM was kind of my bread and butter. The longer it was, probably the better off I was at it.
Ooh.
I can't even see myself swimming that.
Nah, I swim for. People always ask me, they're like, oh, are you a good swimmer? I'm like, I swim for survival.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
like, I can swim.
Float.
I can swim if my life is on the line,
float,
but I'm not gonna. I can never keep up with you, Cory. That's for sure.
So
it's all good.
Bring us back to you obviously being an athlete. Was this always a passion that stemmed of being a coach through your athletics, and kind of like how did that cultivate through time? And then obviously going online.
Yeah, I mean, it was a passion of mine, but I chose to ignore it at first because I was chasing money and I thought sales was the best way to do it. So I got into a sales role. I was refinancing mortgages for about 10 months. That's how long that lasted.
Solid.
I was like, all right, yeah, getting back to my roots, quit that job, and I became a summer swim coach, which is not the most scalable job. It means you're employed for 2 months out of the year. So I figured I got to be doing something more than this, and started a year-round swim program at the same place I was coaching in the summer. That was kind of my first entrepreneurial step. They let me run it as it was my own business. They actually let me hold space in the pool rent-free. Cool. And they just said, whatever you bring in is your profits. I said, all right, let's run with it.
So tell me, those 10 months of sales, they had paid off.
Obviously.
There we go.
I hated them, but they were good. They were good for what I do now. So as I was becoming a swim coach, getting back into those roots, I loved it, but I still wanted to do a little bit more through my own fitness journey post swim. I was like, well, what if I help other people start to lose weight and get in shape and build the bodies they want? So I got the first few certifications. That was growing, found myself the assistant fitness director, and then things shut down. And I was like, what the hell do I do now?
Yeah, no gym, right? No gym.
No gym. Yeah.
No gym,
so
no pool, right?
yeah, everything was closed. And I was like, well, this podcast is going pretty well, talking a lot on mindset. Let me see if I can bring mindset into fitness, and how can I make a larger impact with that. And more athletes I talked to, I found a lot of them in the same boat of feeling a little bit lost, trying to understand their purpose, trying to understand their identity physically and mentally in life post sports. So that's really the problem I solve now, is helping them tackle it.
And where do you find most athletes are lacking in terms of their mindset, whether it be while they're playing or post career, right? Because that's usually a big thing for a lot of athletes. Like, how do I transition
Or
from
off season as well.
And we were even talking, we had Ricky Williams and we were talking to him, and he's like, I had to really recalibrate and find who I was after football, and it seems to be a pretty common trend. Obviously, I was a collegiate strength coach for a little while, and we would always tell kids, like, you got to get prepared, like, focus on school and what you're going to do after your career. So what did you really see that made you go, okay, this is a big area of need for these people that I think I could really serve them?
Yeah, I think it is having that conversation of like, who are you beyond an athlete, which is tough to do and have when you're still in college athletics, or even worse, like when you're in pro sports, because to some extent it has to be your end all be all to get to that level in the first place. You have to be very hyper focused, and you look at every action that you're taking throughout the day. Like, am I going to do this? Is it going to make me a better football player? Is it going to make me a better swimmer? No. Okay. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go to bed early. I'm going to skip the going out. So much so that then we can wrap our identity into being and only being the sport. So that's where I think what's lacking when they're in sport is they're one track minded. And then when they transition out, it leads to that difficulty of, okay, well, who am I without this? That one piece that's been there since I was 4 years old to lean on isn't there anymore.
So
what do I do?
How do you work around that though? Like, them being elite athletes and wanting to be elite athletes, but then again, understanding that other side. How do you go around working with an athlete like that, to kind of help them out, but not also damage what they're enjoying and making a career out of?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's taking this approach that what you do shouldn't define you, but it should be an expression of who you are. So just because you play a sport doesn't mean you're just an athlete, but your performance in that sport is going to be tenfold if you're super passionate, and it's an expression of who you are at your core. And it's helping them understand that second piece, and it's separate rather than it just being tied together.
Yeah, and that's you hit it on the head. It is so tough because, especially when you're talking about like high level Division I and moving into the professional ranks, like the amount of money that is on the line, the amount of pressure that these kids and young adults are going through. Because let's be honest, like professional athletes are not old people. They're not. Far and few are Tom Brady, 40 years old and still playing. They're 23, 24, 25. Most of their careers end before they're 30. I'm just turning 30 and I barely, know who I am as a person without being a fitness trainer. I could only imagine being 24 and then being cut from a team and then like, okay, your career's over.
Making all this money and then
everything
like,
you've
what do
done
I do
since you
now?
were 5, has been up to this point and now it's over. Like at 24, I would have been completely lost.
Yeah, it's tough. And I think there's a lot of pride that gets in the way when we're talking athletes, right? Like, you want to be prideful in those accomplishments, and you should be. Like, they're not something that a lot of people on this earth accomplish. But all of a sudden we lose sight of asking for help when sport ends. When we started sport in the first place, as hearing your guys' story of like football and high school football, obviously you wanted to play on the best team. You wanted to have a coach to help guide you, and you wanted to surround yourself with people around you to help accomplish a similar goal. All of a sudden, when that sport structure ends, for whatever reason, I think it's pride and ego gets in a lot of the way of a lot of these athletes, myself included in my own journey. I wanted to do everything myself. wasn't until I hired a business coach that my business started to really take off.
No, it's so key too. I mean, he'll tell you how big my ego is, and he was telling me for so long, this is what it's his bread and butter, fitness business coaching. Bro, let me help you. Nah, fuck you, man. I got this. Like, I know what I'm doing. Like, there's no way you know more than I do, Mendez. No way. And then, of course, right, I start working with him, and my fucking business exploded, right? Because he was able to find holes that I wasn't willing to allow myself to be able to see. Right. And I feel like that's pretty much the same thing that you're probably doing when it comes to the mindset side of these athletes' lifestyles.
Yeah. And it's tricky because a lot of those holes exist, but we're blind to them. So, because we only have our own perspective to see. So we're just going through life with these blind spots. And that's kind of my job, is just to highlight, hey, maybe we could be sleeping a little bit better. And it's actually going to carry over to your ability to show up the way that you want to show up. It's not really an issue of you staying up too late. It's an issue of you not valuing sleep.
100%.
Or that's just an example.
And the thing is that, and that's why, like, as coaches, we need coaches. As mentors, we need mentors, because always, you're never going to be the best critic of yourself or the work. You know what I mean? You're never going to be able to find those holes yourself 100%, maybe only to a certain extent.
Nah, if you ask me, I'm the fucking man.
And the thing is that you need other people outside of yourself to be able to see from up here what you can't see, right? Because you're not going to be able to see certain things that somebody else might see, and that's going to be able to give you a better path or game plan moving forward. Now, at the same time, it's funny because I know we kind of talked about it on other podcasts, but I think at the same time, it is important to have some ego. It is important to have some anger. It is important to have some of those small traits that maybe got you out of the first position in your life that you were in, that was probably like, I need to survive. Like, I need to get out of this. My family's suffering. We're poor. Like, I need to do something, or I need to get out of this. Is my opportunity, and using some of that as a fuel to get you into the first step of opportunity. And then now I have to understand, okay, this fuel is not going to be long lasting, because it is going to eventually catch up to me and mess me up, right? My health, burnout, all that stuff, my anger, it's not healthy. But it did get me out of that first column, that first stage of my life, to where I'm at now, and then building upon that. So how do you work, especially with young athletes, in your take? Because I would love to hear your take on it. I know we asked similar to another coach, but how do you work when it comes to your athletes, when it comes to playing with their fuel? That could be part of that. Playing with it in a way that's going to help them, but also not taking away what got them there in the first place, and continuing forward with success?
I love that question. I think it's understanding that there's a time and place for all of those. Like, even the most spiritually woke people still feel anger at some points in their day-to-day life. They're just not an overall angry person. I think anger is a great motivating factor, especially for a lot of athletes when they get started. It gets them out of a lot of tough situations, and it produces these great players. But if you're always playing angry, you're also limiting your ability to perform, because anger has been shown to be an emotion that doesn't really, I guess, preface like high performance, peak performance state, flow state, whatever you want to call it.
Example, LeBron James in the when he first came to the Miami Heat that first season, he said it. The reason I lost, he's like, I was playing the sport I loved out of anger, because that last year I couldn't win the championship. I came in here angry, and then I remember going into the following season, he goes, I changed my whole mindset.
Yeah, and you have to think, like, when you're angry, how does your body actually hold that emotion? It's pretty tense. So yeah, you can muscle through a lot of situations, but when you're prime example, NBA championship, push comes to shove at the end of the season. You're talking the two best teams, some of the best players in the world on the stage. You're not going to prevail through muscling your way through it. Very rarely are we always going to be the strongest person in the room. Sometimes we got to rely on some finesse and some technique in there, and anger doesn't allow that to shine through as much as other emotions like gratitude and all those buzzwords that we hear in the mindset world, right?
Unless you're Josh, right?
Well, I was gonna say Mendez is pretty used to not being the strongest person in the room when he's next to me, but it's perfectly okay. You already knew it was coming.
I knew it was coming. It's
This
always
is what
coming.
7 years of knowing someone will
It's
do.
always
to you.
coming.
You know, it's
But
always coming.
The fact that you brought that up, I think it is important. You know, and I think it is. People don't realize too sometimes what these athletes are really going to. We only see the spotlight and the fame and the the money and the attention, and behind the doors, like there is a lot going on. And even behind those doors, when they go into their own private homes and with their families or friends, like there's even more. So I think it is important, for especially athletes to find the help and the coaching they need, not just on the field, but the other kind of coaching that can help them with their personal life.
Yeah, I think it's taking the holistic approach, the holistic view of. That's where I'm really excited to see where sports is moving to. I think this conversation is becoming more prevalent, especially in the pro leagues. Like you guys got guys like Kevin Love that are coming out and saying like he struggles with performance anxiety and depression. And it's like, oh my gosh, yeah, like me too. Like we're all in that kind of boat. Kyrie took a bunch of mental health days earlier this season just to get his mind right. And I think there's finally less of a stigma around it and this holistic picture of like, they're not just a basketball player. They're not just a football player. They're this holistic person. They got feelings. We got to acknowledge them because they're just like us.
Right. And I mean, when you think about it too, with especially in American culture, right, we put athletes on a pedestal, right? Especially when you're talking about like resiliency, when you're talking about physical gifts, right? Like everything, determination, hard work, everything that goes into being like a true athletic champion, right? To be one of the best, if not the best in your sport, right? Which is essentially what Division I and professional players are. They're the elite of the elite. So we put them on a pedestal thinking like, okay, you as a Division I swimmer, Cory, I would look at you and say, oh man, like Cory's this amazing swimmer. Like I wish I had that type of athleticism. It's like, well, what if that type of athleticism wasn't for me? Right. So I'm trying to mirror what you're doing. Right. And this is what I always try to tell my clients when they're like, oh, well, I want to do what this athlete's doing. It's like, well, you're not that athlete. You are an athlete. You're not that athlete. Right. You can be athletic. Doesn't mean you need to be athletic as a basketball player or as a swimmer. Right. You need to be athletic for what you're doing in your lifestyle. Right. So I think we not only set the current athletes up, but future athletes up for failure because we're telling them like, you have to look like LeBron. You have to look like a 350-pound offensive tackle if you want to play in the NFL. And it's like, well, couldn't you be 280 and just be a lot stronger and a lot more agile and then not have all these joint problems? You know what I mean? There's definitely ways around it, but if we just put them in these prototypical molds, right, and say this is what you have to be, you're going to set them up for mental anguish. You're going to set them up for a lot of hardship that they might not have to go through if you just let them express, like you were saying, express who they are through sport.
Yeah, it's leaning into that identity, but not falling victim to that being the only asset of them. And one of the things I work with a lot of my clients on is helping them understand their superpower. Like, what is it that makes them them? I mean, we talked about it earlier. I'm a distance swimmer. I prayed to God that I would be a sprinter one day, and it just never happened. Like as much as
just get me in and out of the pool, please.
Yeah, I was like, let me just do the 50 like once. Come on, like it looks fun. Like my last ever college race was the fucking mile. Like that's
brutal.
Talk about adrenaline. Like you want to go in and like you're pumped up, and then it's like, all right, and go for 15 minutes. And you're just like, all of that adrenaline just drops. So, but I understood at that point, like I am a distance swimmer and I use that to my advantage. And then I just had fun with it when I was doing stuff outside of my superpower, so to speak. So I think if younger athletes really start to understand where their lane is and carve that out and just be really, really good in that space rather than trying to be someone they're not, they're going to have way more success.
And how do you walk someone through that, right? So that they can establish what their superpower is to be able to lean into it and succeed.
That is important.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Honestly, it really starts, at least where I do it with people, is having them write out their story up until this point and then picking out little themes that kind of lend itself to finding like, okay, look, it looks like you're pretty resilient. Like that could be a superpower trait of yours. It looks like you've tried this in the past and it hasn't worked out. Let's understand why. And if it's a technical thing or if it's a you thing, that will determine how we move forward from there.
Have you seen people you've worked with when you do that? Have you seen them discover superpowers they didn't even know they had?
Yeah, it's a lot of senses. It's discovering superpowers that they knew they have, but they just haven't thought of for a long time. You know what I mean? And that's really my own story too. It's like, I knew I was good at connecting with people. I was doing it my whole life in swimming, but for the first few years when swimming ended, I didn't make it a point to network with people. I didn't make it a point to sit down with cool people like yourselves and have these kind of conversations.
That's a stretch. Yeah.
You know what I mean, though?
You got to feed Josh's ego a little.
Yeah, thanks, man. I'm pumping now.
I'm pumping him up a little bit there. So
You know what? My headphones are going to start to stretch out.
A little blue check.
Yeah. I always rip on him about
He's always bugging me.
I'm always like, all right, Mr. Verified. So how did you, once you got out of swimming, right? Once you started kind of going through that mental battle of trying to figure or reestablish, right, what your superpower really was, connecting with people and helping them through their own journey. How did that go for you, and how, like, what were some of the challenges, I guess, right, for your own personal story on battling through that, and how were you able to overcome those challenges?
And then to add on top of that, because I think that's an amazing question, I think for both you and your clients, discovering your superpower is amazing. What are the actions that you needed to take, the tools to be able to unravel that and make it now effective on both on your end and in your clients?
great questions. I'll answer my own story first, then tie it into that. I think for me personally, it was super interesting. So my first 3 years at Delaware were phenomenal. I never finished worse than fourth at championships at the end of the year, which to my knowledge hasn't been done before or since. And that's in 3 different events on 3 separate years. So 9 different times was in the top 4.
Let's go.
Or faster. Then senior year hit, and it was like first event got 5th, second event got 6th. I was like, what the fuck is happening? And I said it earlier, my last college event was the mile. I was pumped up for it. I couldn't wait to go out on top. Got 8th, my worst finish ever. I was actually slower than I was my junior year of high school, and then it was over. Like, there was no other meets. That was it to my career. I remember just being pissed off. I remember like hugging my dad. I was like, I'm just so thankful to be done with this sport. Like, forget about it. I never want to see a pool again for a little while. And it took me a while to process like why that was the ending. And I think it was because, to that point earlier, if I tied my identity so much so into who I was as a swimmer and my performance as a swimmer, which is tough when you're having those kind of results early on in your career. Your ego gets inflated. You start to feel really good. All of a sudden, my ego wasn't getting that same loving. And I was like, what the heck? Who am I? And I went into sales because I wanted to get fast track to money, because I thought it was the accolades that was pumping me up. And then I learned very quickly when I got money through sales that it wasn't the accolades that I loved about swimming. It was really the connection and the impact that I was able to have with my teammates around me. That was what led me into, okay, I'm really good at connecting with people. I'm really good at just listening and understanding and then offering advice from there. And that's how the coaching business was kind of stumbled upon, not so intentionally. And I take that same process now to help people understand, one, why they got started and whatever that first love of their life was. I mean, maybe it's sport for you, maybe it's something else, but understanding at its core what you loved about it, why were you attracted to it, and then finding ways to bring that into what you're doing already. And I think if we can do that successfully, you start to feel more fulfilled in your day-to-day life. You find yourself happier, and your performance and your success is correlated to that because you're able to show up.
Brother, you nailed it, and I think that's just so important, everything that you brought up, and the fact that, you know, the way you went through your story and kind of telling us where you're at today goes to show the success that you're having. And I think on top of that, what you're doing for your clients, for these athletes, and using the podcast as a tool to be able to drive awareness, I think it's a beautiful thing, because more people need that, right? That awareness and understanding of, you know, how can I get myself from here and get myself over here and rediscover certain things, like my superpowers that, like you said, they know they had them, but they forgot about them, or they're fogged up, you know. And I think that, you know, a lot of people walk around this world, not just athletes, but just a lot of people in general walk around this world not understanding, you know, what their true superpowers really are, or if they do know, they just don't know how to use them correctly. And I think that's truly amazing what you're doing.
Appreciate that. Yeah, I think there's so many soft skills that you learn as athletes, and it really honestly pisses me off when you're going through the job process, getting hired afterwards, and they're like, "Oh, so you're an athlete? You must have great time management skills." What the?
No, I've been told my whole life on what I was going to be doing and what time I've been doing it. Yeah, but I appreciate it. Yeah.
At 25, you're like, okay, great. Well, what the fuck does time management look like now? I don't understand it anymore.
I don't have class. I don't have practice. There's no meeting. Like, I don't have mess hall. There's no study hall. Like, you know, time management. You mean I have to show up on time? Okay, I can do. Is that what you mean by time management? I'm going to show up. Like, yeah, please define that for me.
That guy over in academic support is no longer making your whole class schedule for you, making sure you're right in the right classes. You have study hall at this time. You're eating at this time. Like, it just doesn't happen for you anymore.
Well, and it's, you know, it blows my mind when you see people and like, oh man, you know, like, I saw this professional, like, some of my friends will hit me up and be like, "Oh man, like you know this guy from Syracuse, like he fell off. Like what happened? You know, he used to be such a great football player. He would have all the success. Now, like I saw him in this ESPN article, he's broke, like he's homeless, like whatever, you know, whatever it may be." And you're like, "Listen, man, they've been coddled their whole life,
and they're people,
you know, like, and that's not a bad thing, right? Because they're providing a major service and they're doing a lot of work. Like, I don't think people really understand, like." When they see you as a swimmer, right? If they go to your meet, they're only seeing the meet. They're not seeing you in the weight room at 6 a.m. They're not seeing you at study hall at 11 at night. They're not seeing you go to class, making sure that you go to class because someone's coming to check to make sure you went to class. All the travel, all the meetings, like all of what goes into you being prepared for that meet. No one thinks about that.
What even's going in your own head,
right? So when they see that, when they look and see all this athletes, you know, falling off, they're like, oh, well, you know, they've had everything. It's like they've had some things given to them, right? But they've also had some things taken away from them because they weren't able to grow up on their own, because someone was checking to make sure that they woke up on time. Someone made sure they went to bed on time. Someone made sure that they ate their meals. Like, I know football players that don't know how to cook, right? And then they get out of you know, playing college football, and they're like, well, where do I go? Like, where is the dining hall for me to eat? And it's like, bro, you gotta bake your own food now. Like, I'll teach you how to turn the oven on because some woman or man has been, you know, feeding you surf and turf every Thursday for the past 4 years, and mom and dad did it before then.
Yeah, and I think we need that level of coddling to some extent, right?
100%. Throw me in the fire, I would have been fucked. You know?
Like, if we were responsible for all of that other stuff while also trying to go out and perform at that level, like, something's got to go. It's why, you know, I miss my meal service company, because since I moved, I don't have it anymore. But that was just one of those things where I was like, I know me, like, I love to cook, but I know the quality of my work is just that much higher when I don't have to put any brain power in towards what ingredients am I going to grab at the grocery store? Right. What am I going to cook and when? It was just all automated. So if we automate a lot of stuff, we become way more efficient, and our performance can increase in some areas, but that can lead to some problems down the road too.
Yeah, and don't. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but don't get me wrong. I ate at that the football only dining hall every day. Every day. I must have put on 15 pounds. You know, you're not going to give me free food and expect me not to.
Sure.
Bro, I was going to say he was like, oh, I know what my superpower is. I know what your superpower is too. Smashing croquetas and empanadas. Never seen anybody eat as much as this guy in my life and stay relatively lean as you are. You know,
that's
like,
how you usually see me before playing football.
Oh my God, fucking butterball! I can only imagine.
225,
just
man.
rolling down the field.
Dude, insane.
I say, Mendez, you should have ate with us and the team after swim practice, man. We
listen,
used to put down
swimmers-
some
I would
food.
love to.
He might be. Honestly, I'm not. You know, and you obviously because you just mentioned it. Other than maybe yourself, swimmers eat more than any athlete I've ever seen in my entire life. Honestly, I was so impressed. I'm like this little, even divers, right? I used to train the divers at FAU, and I'm like this 155-pound diver who's crushing it, but 155 pounds is eating more than me when I was 195. You know?
That was another part of my transition that I had to go through. I went from this place of literally, I had my strength coach in college tell me I should wake up at 3 a.m. and eat a peanut butter sandwich just to get some excess calories in because I was trying to put on weight, and it still wasn't happening. Like I was eating 7,000 calories a day, and I was maintaining. I was in a maintenance phase, which is insane. So then obviously I was conditioned to all these poor eating habits of every time I walked past a pantry or the fridge, I was grabbing something and eating, and that caught up to me in life post-sport. Mendez, I want to know your secret of how that hasn't caught up to you. I'd be curious.
That's a good one.
The beard hides a lot of it,
right?
The beard hides a lot.
Does it? That's a good one.
Listen, I get
I'll
his
tell you
blood
this.
pressure
I'll
up
tell
and
you
down
this.
all day, up and down all day.
During the week, I'm pretty good. Now you unleash me on the weekend, or you unleash me.
He'll shut down a Golden Corral. He's banned from Panda Express. I'm pretty sure they don't let him.
Panda Express.
They don't let him go on Panda Express.
No, you don't understand. My dad used to get so pissed. I've said it's probably 5 times. He's always like, "Son, stop eating with your eyes, please. Stop eating with your eyes." He's like, "If I see you eating like this already," he's like, "It's disgusting. I'm gonna slap you." But it was just like
he can't even sit. I've been to a couple of restaurants. He can't even sit. So he's like, "All right, man, the food."
I'm like,
the food. I'm like, bro, relax.
What can I say? I love food, man.
Man.
It is what it is. Diving a little deeper when it comes to the athletes, where do you find it? Do you find it easier or harder working with younger athletes who are maybe from college, high school, college, or going into the pros from college, or athletes that are already in their sport for a while, veterans and maybe exiting out of their sport? What do you find it harder when it comes to discovery? Is it the ones you have to rewire or the ones you have to build up to because they're so young approaching into their life?
It's harder to work with the ones that you need to rewire. It's very challenging when you get to, even still, if you retire at 24 or 25 or 30, however long your pro career lasts, fantastic. You probably started that sport very early on, so you've been conditioned to go down the same neural pathway time and time and time again, that it's now a paved 8-lane highway. And now we have to go in and kind of take some excavation crews and knock out some of those lanes and redirect traffic to another train of thought than you're so used to going to. Whereas those athletes that are still in their sport, they're on the younger side of things, they're a pretty malleable mind still. They can make those connections, that pivot, a little bit easier than the ones that have just been so ingrained into that way of thinking for so long.
Yeah, and you're spot on with that, and it does. We know from training people in person too. It's backing them down, regressing them, right? Making them understand that you don't have to take these big leaps and bounds. Sometimes it's okay to take 2 steps back to take 3 steps forward. We're well versed when it comes to the physical way that you regress people, right? What are some ways that you mentally regress people so that they can take that leap forward when they're ready?
I like that. It's similar process, believe it or not. I think it really is this concept that I've gotten through periodization models of training physically training clients. This concept of slow down to speed up. So helping people understand if their workload volume is X and it's super high this week, they should probably make sure that they take some time on the weekend to fully decompress and take a step back. If they find themselves working on a project at work that now is spanning the next month, and they know right now it's tax season for an accountant, it's probably hell right now, right? They're super swamped and busy. They have the capacity to push through it, but I would encourage them after the fact, hey, take a week off versus just 2 to 3 days. If we can understand energy management and mental management in the same breath as we do physical training, maybe it looks like on a daily basis, taking 10 minutes to just meditate or whatever that looks like. Maybe it's just a breath to yourself. You know what I mean? Taking some time to read, doing these little things prevents you from that long-term burnout that we see all the time in those clients or athletes that are just pushing heavyweight without any back off period, taper, regression. It doesn't actually do them any benefit in the long run.
So how do you actually sit down with a high performer like that and tell them, hey, brother or sister, you have to like back things up? You know, how do you tell that? Because that's not easy for a high performer to take in, you know.
That's great. I'm asking for a friend. Yeah.
You know, even including myself.
I'm asking for a friend here.
You know, and that's not, you know, I know some people are crazy though, but
oh yeah.
You know, and
3 hours of sleep.
How do you tell one that, especially your coach? What do you do? What are those steps and what's the way of you telling them? Because it's easy for them to fall back and then like, yeah, okay, cool, done. I'm gonna keep being.
I'm gonna pull my phone out. I'm gonna take some notes. I'm gonna take some notes.
So what's unique about the way that I approach it is I bring in the physical side to complement all of these kind of conversations. So if I was telling someone, hey, we got to understand this concept of slow down to speed up to really move you forward, and that's like every high performer hates to hear that, right? We're just gonna probably tune you out if there's not a personal relationship. So
just one more day, Cory. I just need one more hour to get this done.
Please.
Like I have a client right now. We're struggling early on because he's decided to start up 3 different companies at the same damn time.
Cory, I have to.
Like, I was like, can't you just pick one, maybe 2? Like, let that third one just like wait. And he's like, no way.
You don't understand.
I was like, okay, cool. So like, there's at least time at home, right? And he's like, well, he's done it to himself. He's had 3 kids in 4 years and got a puppy at the same time that his latest newborn was born.
Does he just walk around patting his head and rubbing his stomach all day? Like,
I was like, dude, we got to take a step back. So a guy like him hates being told slow down because he's just been conditioned, foot on the gas, go. But he knows where he's at right now is this unsustainable, like he's stressed out. So what I'll do is I'll have the conversation with him first off, and then I'll make sure he goes through some sort of, maybe it's starting small and be like, hey, we'll introduce 10 minutes of yoga today or something like that, where they're like, okay, is this beneficial? I don't know. That's the tricky part of working with high performers, especially coming from the athletic background, is we're so conditioned and wired to having it be that 2-3 hour workout that we struggle to see a 10-minute workout, a 10-minute walk as being productive.
Yeah.
It's walking them through it though, and showing them, okay, and starting to get them to tune into their biofeedback markers of how their sleep quality is. What are their hormones at? Like, how are they feeling outside of just, and yeah, that's pretty much what I walk them through.
And I think on top of that, I think another thing that helps is the fact that if the way you're explaining it now, like you're in a normal tone, you're sitting down, you're not, yeah, you know, hey, you got to do it, you know, because you're bringing out all this energy again. You're just going to just rev them up. So I think that's a huge thing that I think a lot of coaches too is like, you got to understand when to adapt, or like, you know, hey, if you know your client needs to slow it down, well, maybe you should, you know, slow yourself down with your tone and like bring it a little bit down, so that way they can kind of feel that type of energy and like maybe settle down a little bit and then bring them to a good place. And then there are those people that, you know, you got to rev them up some. So you got to bring, as a coach, you got to bring your energy up a little bit more and trying to get them a little more hyped.
Yeah, you got to tap into that late night smooth jazz DJ voice.
We're gonna
jazz flute.
We're gonna call you when we need that.
Yeah, exactly. All we get down here at nighttime is like EDM music or like 2 Chainz.
He's gonna play a little record player in the back. He's gonna talk to us.
Yeah, just some smooth jazz.
If you guys ever need a slower intro to Sweat It Out podcast, let me know.
Yeah, perfect.
There we go. Now we know. Now we
know.
I
don't know. Down here in the city built by the Cocaine Cowboys, I think amped up all day. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, you're moving to Puerto Rico.
I know, right? I'm moving to the island life, man. I got to get out of here. Too amped up for
I'm
me.
the only amp that's gonna be continuous in your life.
That's all right, man. I'm gonna come back like, all right, man. Let's just tone it down. It's gonna be like NPR here.
Well, the thing he forgets is you're gonna be hanging out with me at my place.
Oh God. Yeah.
No, but it'll help us both because you'll balance it out.
I think so. I think so. So for you, Cory, what does that look like, right? Like, how do you allow yourself, right, or what do you do in order to make sure that you're able to back it down, right, so that you're not overworking yourself? What are the things Cory really enjoys doing in his free time that maybe might interest some other people?
Yeah, great question, and something that I probably wouldn't have been able to answer a year ago, because when I was doing that country club job, I was leaving the house at 4:30, getting back at 8:30 p.m. You guys know how that is, like the
100%.
corporate gym.
That's why we don't do it anymore.
Exactly.
Fuck that.
Yeah, that's why we
there's
talk
been
on a microphone like this for a living.
There's been this flood of like people in the online space because they start to realize like, oh my God, I can have the best of both worlds. It's no longer this either or, it's this and also. And I think what's really helped me on a day-to-day basis, one, is try to make sure I'm doing something that just excites the crap out of me every single day.
What is that?
And
What are you doing
is
right
it?
now
What
that's
is that?
getting
What am I
you
doing
pumped?
right now? I mean, I just got back from Brazil, and while I was out there, I was cliff jumping. I was climbing some mountains.
That's
went for a
my type of guy.
helicopter
That's my
ride.
type of guy
There
right
we
there.
go.
I love that savage lifestyle.
Yeah, it's toned down a little bit since then because it's a little bit more expensive to do those things in LA than Brazil. But yeah, it's making sure I'm doing something that is just cool every single day. It fills my own cup, and then when my cup is full, I can then go to other people around me. It's less exciting stuff like reading. It's writing down my own thoughts and journaling a little bit, just because I have so much stuff going on up here. If it's not clear when I'm going into a podcast recording or sitting down with a client, we're going to both walk away from whatever that looked like and be like, what did we just talk about? There was no clarity there. So I have to make sure my own marbles are in a line before I start to help other people figure out theirs.
What are some of the things, real quick, that you say would fog up your memory or that you have to jot down on your notebook?
Things that are just like blocking me
Yeah.
a little bit. I'd say sometimes it's like the feeling of not making enough progress, which is something that high performers can really fall victim to. You know what I mean? Where we get to the end of the day and we're like, wow, I didn't really do anything today. So one of the things I do to combat that is actually writing down my daily wins, like 3 to 5 things that went well for me. And it just then expresses that gratitude, and I start to embody it. And like we talked about earlier, flow state, I'm able to get into flow state a little bit more, or I'm able to unwind and go to bed a little bit easier because I'm no longer racing through my head like, what did I not accomplish today? What do I have to do tomorrow? It's now coming into this place of I accomplished a lot today, and what do I get to do tomorrow? Right.
And I mean, listen, I think this is, a great place to wrap it up, and I'll give you the floor in a second to have people, know where to reach out to you and to find you. But if you take those 3 to 5 small wins, like 3 wins each and every day, 365 days a year is over 1,000. You know what I mean? Over 1,000 wins for the year. Now, when you look at it like that, it's powerful. It's powerful. So I couldn't agree with you more. I think everybody should really be acknowledging all the wins, big and small, right? Like waking up in the day and making your bed is a win. We talked about that on your podcast, right?
Yeah.
Not only, making 10 grand in a day is a win, but if you get up and you make your bed, there are people in this world that can't do that anymore, right? So that I would consider that a big win,
But guys, it's not enough.
Right. Well, but we can work on that, but, Cory, I want to say thank you. Obviously, I've been able to connect with you on quite a few different levels, Clubhouse, obviously on your podcast, now here on the Sweat It Out podcast. And, each and every time, man, I leave with these little golden nuggets that I absolutely know I can implement into my next day and every day after that. And, for that, I want to thank you not only for sharing that with myself and with Anthony, but with our audience. How can people reach out to you, and what's the best way to find yourself, find what you're doing in your coaching business, and as well what you're doing with the podcast?
Yeah. Oh, before that, I want to acknowledge you guys for holding this space. I think what you've created here is something special. So appreciate you guys inviting me on and allowing me the opportunity. I think if people are interested to find me, pretty easy on Instagram at Cory Camp, no E in Cory. Website is corycamp.com. Podcast is the Athletic Mindset podcast, where you listen to this show. Just pop on over there afterwards.
Love it.
There we go. Love it. Yo, brother, once again, I appreciate you taking your time to come out here, speak with us. Definitely an honor to have you on. We appreciate everything you brought to the table today. And also, not on top of that, sharing your own experiences and some of the struggles you're dealing with and how you're able to combat those through your own practices and apply those practices with your clients as well. I think that's amazing. Like we always end this, we shoot it up with some rapid fire questions. We're going to get you going. All right. Number one, if you had to pick one tool to use to just become better every single day as a person, what tool would that be?
I'm a mindset coach. My mind.
Boom. Number two, what was the craziest and wildest experience you ever had in your career?
In my career or just my life?
Could be your life, career.
Whichever one is
one's
more
wilder
YouTube
and
oriented,
crazier.
we're good there.
All right. I'm pissed because it is on YouTube, but it was a parent of another swimmer's, and he was not in contention for the win. So I'm not in viewpoint. Basically, my sophomore year was.
That's the best edition, by the way.
Yes,
Like I'm not even in the video because I'm
I'm not
fucking.
even in the video. I was just so
I'm
far
cooking.
ahead.
Yeah.
Craziest experience though. I was seeded number one going into finals, first time on that stage, and it was the 500 free, about 400 yards into it. It looked like I was in 5th place. It looked like I had totally shot the bed at finals, and somehow I just found another gear. I dug deep and I picked off people one by one, so much so that I was tied for first at the last wall, and I just looked at the guy next to me and I go, there's no way in hell he's beating me to the finish. And I was able to fly by him and touch him out, and that's why I wasn't in the video.
Savage. Woo! Sounds like a NASCAR race. Love it. Last and final question. What is the biggest piece of advice you can leave off to all our listeners today in one sentence?
Never be afraid to be a beginner again. I think there's something we can always learn from other people, and it's okay to start over in some different areas, especially when you're starting a new endeavor.
Powerful.
yeah.
We haven't heard that one.
No,
Guys,
that's amazing. I love
never
that.
be afraid to be a beginner again. Guys, you heard it from Cory himself. Brother, we appreciate you. Guys, you can learn a lot.
Oh, yeah. Make sure you guys go check him out on Instagram. Make sure you go check out the podcast as well. Find it on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Google Play, everywhere.
Everywhere.
Appreciate you, Cory. Until next
Appreciate
time,
you
guys.
fellas.